What's up, everyone? It's Bones here. I don't normally do rant videos, but before I get started, I would like to acknowledge that we will be getting more cards that could save this archetype. I would also like to mention that everything I say isn't hate towards Konami, and nobody is perfect. Companies aren't safe from that either. I don't like to let negative thinking influence my judgment, and what I'm about to say are my honest and objective thoughts about Valmonica, and some of these decisions being made by Konami. But first, if you're a fan of in-depth combo videos, new set coverage, and occasional fun stuff that we like to do on the channel, then absolutely annihilate those thumbs up and subscribe buttons the same way that I'm about to do to Valmonica. I'd first like to state, in a stark contrast to my previous video, I can't find anything that I like about this deck at the moment. I'd argue that Valmonica has some of the game's biggest red flags wrapped up into one deck, and it makes them, in my opinion, feel like even less than what I initially thought of them when that realization kicks in. And first, I'm going to start with our two main deck monsters. I'll leave the artwork for last as I really don't like that either, but as I read through these, there are three very big problems with both of these cards. The first one being Angel Valmonica. Its pendulum effect reads, while you have a Fiend monster card in your other pendulum zone, each time you gain life points, place one resonance counter on this card. So two big problems on that first effect on itself. You have to have a Fiend monster in your pendulum zone, and you have to be able to gain life points just to get one counter. And then once per turn, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can immediately, after this effect resolves, link summon one Valmonica monster, and you're never doing that during your first turn because you won't have a battle phase. Now, we're going to go to the monster effect, which reads, if this card is in your hand, you can discard one other card as a cost. Place both this card and one Demon Valmonica from your deck in your pendulum zone. Keep in mind that you are discarding a card for this. You will be able to place it in your pendulum zone, but then the really funny thing is that during your main phase, if this card was normal or special summon this turn, so if you open this and put it into your scale with its effect, you're not going to be able to normal or special summon it without another card effect, but you can banish one Valmonica normal spell trap from your graveyard as a cost, apply that spell trap's effect that includes gaining life points when that card is activated, and you can only use each monster effect of Angel Valmonica once per turn. And I kind of get what Konami was going with here. You see that the Angel has the gaining life point stuff, while the Demon of the deck, which happens to be the light monster, and the Angel is the dark monster, which just shows how backward this archetype kind of is. But its pendulum effect reads, while you have a fairy monster card in your other pendulum zone, each time you take effect damage, place one resonance counter on this card, and monsters your opponent control lose 100 attack for each resonance counter on your field. So again, very underwhelming in every sense of the word. I just don't have any positive thing to say about that effect. And then we're going to go to the monster effect, which reads, if this card is in your hand, you can discard one other card as a cost, place both this card and one Angel Valmonica from your deck in your pendulum zone. Then during your main phase, if this card was normal or special summoned, you can banish one Valmonica normal spell trap from your graveyard as a cost, apply that spell trap's effect that includes taking damage when that card is activated. You can only use each effect of Demon Valmonica once per turn. Now, I would like to show how it looks when I resolve these cards to put them on the scale to give you an idea of where my frustrations with this archetype come if you aren't really familiar with the deck. But we're going to start here by declaring the effect of the Demon Valmonica will be able to pitch the Trick Clown, which seems ideal because you're going to be able to lose life points. And keep in mind that there is other stuff like the Zephyros that you can play as well, which will be able to put back the scale in your hand, but it is a once per duel effect, which means that you're only going to be playing one of it, and it's not really going to be consistent unless you get a way to send it to the graveyard, which you can play stuff like Assault Synchron, go into Boreas Storm, and do it that way, but that assumes you have other cards in hand as well. And I just want to show what you get off of a 1.5 card combo here, where stuff like Chimera can just make its own board with one card. But we're now going to continue to get Angel scale here. I can't find it, but okay, here it is. And we're going to scale it here. This will give us the ability to pendulum summon exactly up to level 4. We'll also get the effect of the Trick Clown, which means we get one counter with 3 vanillas on board that aren't really doing anything at the moment. I would also like to talk about Anti-Spell and D-Barrier completely ruining pendulum decks, especially bad ones, just to get the elephant out of the way. And the second big problem being that it's how slow it is to get these counters. They need to lose or gain life points, and you need to get 3 of them in order to really make their plays work. And if you discard one other card, all you really get, as you saw, are the 2 scales that essentially do nothing. But to make matters worse, with 3 cards left in hand, or if going second, after activating either of these effects from hand, there's not much accessible that we have at the moment that can create plays with even just 1 card alone. In best case scenario, you only draw 1 going second card, which isn't ideal in this game at all. But my problems don't stop there though. If you go to their spell cards, a lot of these cards give your opponent a choice. And I'm going to read the first one, Valmonica Celta. It reads, apply one of these effects, your opponent's choice, if you do not have a Valmonica card in your Pendulum Zone. So it requires that you have a Valmonica card in your Pendulum Zone. Gain 500 life points, then you can place 1 card from your hand on the bottom of the deck, and if you do, draw 2 cards. The second one being, take 500 damage, then you can add 1 Valmonica spell trap from your deck to your hand, except Celta, and you can only activate 1 Celta per turn. So it's not a bad card for the archetype. It has the ability to gain and take damage, which means that it works with both your main deck monsters. It's also a consistency card, which is nice, but it means that you have to have the ability to get both. Then there's Valmonica Versaire, and it says, apply one of these effects, your opponent's choice, if you do not have a Valmonica card in your Pendulum Zone. The first one being, gain 500 life points, then you can excavate cards from the top of your deck until you excavate a Valmonica card, and if you do, add it to your hand. Also, shuffle the rest into the deck. So another consistency card if you gain life points, and then the other effect is, take 500 damage, then you can send 1 Valmonica card from your deck to the graveyard, except Versaire, and you can only activate Versaire once per turn. And this essentially is just meant to get your other spell traps in the graveyard so that you can banish them off of your main deck monsters, but it's not doing anything that breaks the ground for what the deck is really trying to do. Then there's also Valmonica Intonaire, and this one reads, apply one of these effects, your opponent's choice, if you do not have a Valmonica card in your Pendulum Zone, gain 500 life points, then if you have a monster in your graveyard that can be special summoned, your opponent chooses one of them for you to special summon. So that's exactly why you can see it's a one of, if it is something that comes down to your opponent's decision. And if you don't have a monster in the graveyard that you may want to summon, then you're just kind of taking the L there. And then there's the take 500 damage, and you can add 1 level 4 monster from your graveyard to your hand. So it's something that exclusively works with the graveyard, not a consistency piece. That said, you can at least send it off of the Versaire and make plays through that. And then you also have the field spell. This is the only one that really doesn't care about your opponent choosing what you do. And it reads, when this card is activated, you can add 1 Valmonica monster from your deck to your hand. That alone is really good, but if the third resonance counter is placed on a card in your Pendulum Zone, meaning that specifically one of your Pendulum Zones have to have 3 counters on it, meaning one of these do, you have to gain or take damage exclusively. You can target one of your opponent's monsters that they control and take control of it until the end phase, so it's not even permanent, and it cannot declare an attack. So you're better off just playing Change of Heart. Even mind control for that matter. There's just absolutely no reason for these cards to be designed like this in my opinion, but in a game where new sets are struggling to find any sort of stability in longevity, archetypes like this take up more slots of our product release and occupying it in place of potential things that people have been asking for kind of forever. Yesterday, Megacapital G made a video talking about how an influx of too many sets is hurting the game, and I have some thoughts about that. For one, I do feel as if the mat set releases are to keep interest in the game, and the game usually does hit its lowest point once we know what the meta is, and as time passes, the game can start to feel pretty stale, and that's when people start looking towards the next new set, or even towards a new ban list. Personally okay with Konami releasing an influx of new product, but I'm not okay with their current methods. I know this is supposed to be a Valmonica rant, but Valmonica is an archetype that really puts all of the new product problems into one deck, and it magnifies the specific problems within the game, which makes this rant a little bit different, because it's not just Valmonica, it's what Konami is doing when they release archetypes like this. Megacapital G's video, he spoke about the legendary duelist set and what I like to call cash grab sets, the duelist pack or the deck build packs, and to a smaller extent he also mentioned the problems with core sets, and I just want to touch up on all of that. So duelist pack sets like the Secrets of Eternity, Secret Slayers, Amazing Defenders, Wild Survivors, we're covering a deck in Valiant Smashers, which also falls into that category. These sets provide 3 unique archetypes where one of the decks look way prettier than the rest, and one of them may function relatively well, or just take the meta by storm. And if you're lucky, the third deck isn't forgotten. I've never had a problem with the concept of these kinds of sets, as I do enjoy getting to see what pretty cardboard is coming. That said, rarity distribution aside, for the last 2 of these sets has just been awful at every level. Recently, Vanquished Soul and now Centurion dominate the top rarity slots, leaving the less competitive decks rarity dry and competitively dry. Any hype someone may have had for an archetype upon photo reveals can quickly die at the hands of one news drop. Also, it is a really poor choice that Centurion centers around a card that doesn't allow your opponent to play, which makes things even worse, and somehow that's not the main issue that I would like to address here. Stated, Centurion focuses its win condition on summoning a win button, and if that win button gets banned, then all that money that you offloaded for these cards takes a significant hit at an economic and interest level. Once those tank, you're left with a very small player base for each set, as everyone moves to other new cards that came along. Financially, it sounds perfect for Konami for that to be the case, and quite frankly, it almost is. They know their player base will spend for cards that win, and that there's a secondary market that likes to take advantage of pretty cardboard. Problem is that with all of this comes that in a game, based off of an iconic anime, continue to get a huge amount of cards that have nothing to do with it, forcing it to solely rely on competitive viability. This makes it hard for stores to justify buying product, since within the next year, and really within the next few months, we can see a steep decline in box price. It's what to expect with tons of new product and a ban list, which both can heavily influence how the game is played in a short amount of time. A new player could have came into the game during February when Kashtira was $1,000+, and with the ban of Arise Heart, a card that really should have never been printed, just tanked the overall value of the deck. Over the last week, Konami revealed some new Yugi cards that got the attention of many in a positive way, a strategy and concept that was way overdue, and sets up an exciting future for fans not just exclusive to the competitive card game that changes every 5 minutes. Yugi cards have multi-purpose, whether it be wanting a deck to play in a modern setting, people who enjoy character duels, or just to collect them. Watching the game go back to its roots and creating an interest that has tugged at so many for so many years. But you're probably wondering what all of that has to do with Valmonica, and it's actually the last part of that statement. Yugi card releases create a place in the game for people who may want to always hang on to an archetype with a more concentrated player base that will always garner some demand. At this point next year, someone will probably find out about the new Yugi cards, and they'll be set just off of that. Valmonica, Memento, and Centurion all feel, unfortunately, like they're decked with empty calories. Unlike the emotional interest cards people want that can give them interest into the game, new archetypes in this day and age is throwing darts at a dartboard blindfolded. Konami has to hope people like the themes, and if it's just like the playstyle they like, it's likely that we see a repeat of stores dropping those boxes over time, especially if it's only for competitive reasons. That brings me on to my next point of, when you see empty calorie decks that don't have any sort of competitive viability or that are even playable, it fills an already large card pool with cards that opponents will not care one bit about reading. It creates a bad competitive setting, even if they aren't meant to be competitive. Which that brings me to my next point. In 2023, if an archetype can't win a game versus modern decks that actually function, even if they aren't the greatest like Chimera, then what exactly are they catering to? Who are they catering to? In a game meant to provide social interaction between players, I just can't get behind decks being made that don't push any of that in any way. This brings me to my next point and core sets. Core sets for a while have felt like we've been getting a couple of archetypes in full, and then we get 2-3 cards for dozens of other archetypes, which not only make deck building off of one box hard, but it introduces more of these empty calories that I'm talking about. Age of Overlords, we got new waves of cards for Visas, Horus, and the Diabellstar stuff. In that same set, we also got 2-3 individual cards for their previous deck building pack, Wild Survivors with Nouvelles, Vanquish Soul, and Transcendrake. Things considered, I think the Nouvelles and Vanquish Soul cards were very good for their respective strategies. We had to wait several months for them to be put into a core set, which takes space from other impactful cards that we could have potentially gotten to revitalize or give new life to forgotten fan favorites, just cards that have to do with Yu-Gi-Oh! In every sense of the title. Would also like to touch up on Legendary Duelist sets, the concept of Yugi's new cards that are everything those sets are missing. The last few Legendary Duelist sets have focused on a single attribute while giving the characters cards aren't made for sustaining success. Battle and Boxer got outdated support. Volcanic, which was supposed to be the selling point and is still clearly undersupported, and Yumi manages to capture the hearts of Mako enthusiasts with an outdated strategy, while Marincess and Speedroids have had some shine, but neither Marincess or Speedroids are archetypes with a big audience of interest. In fact, most of these choices have only really resonated with a small portion of the player base, and I think that the Legendary Duelist sets would have been better off had they made cohesive archetypes in sets dedicated to one character. We were getting Legendary Duelist sets Cyrus, Pegasus like we did before, Weevil, Merrick, etc., and each character was getting either good or broken support. Both the Yu-Gi-Oh! Fanbase and competitive players would have incentive towards these sets. Instead, we get 3 characters with enough cards to leave each archetype barely holding its head over water until we get something else for it. While I understand it sounds like I'm saying to turn the game into anime only, I'd like to reiterate that that is not what I'm getting at. During the 5Ds era, we had dual terminal and anime cards coming out, which helped keep the interest into the game. Personally like to see us go towards a mix of anime and new archetypes made via lore and stuff like that, rather than random nothing burger archetypes we end up getting through stuff like Valiant Smashers. The set isn't even out yet, and unfortunately, I'm already looking ahead to Legacy of Destruction reveals. Would also like to touch up the last cards that I didn't read. This is Valmonica of the Guiding Rhythm. It's a trap. Another card that you can banish for your Valmonicas. If you control a Valmonica monster card, apply one of these effects, or if you control a Valmonica Link monster, you can apply both in sequence. Gain 500 life points, then you can destroy one spell trap on the field, take 500 damage, then you can return one monster on the field to the hand, so it's removal and it's not even really great removal at that. But then we have our other trap, the Valmonica of Selecting Melody. Read, if you control a Valmonica monster, apply one of these effects. If you control a Valmonica Link monster, you can apply both in sequence. Gain 500 life points, also your opponent cannot target Valmonica monster cards you control with card effects. 500 damage. Then, you can negate the effects of one effect monster your opponent controls until the end of this turn. So just an imperm, which again, doesn't really matter, but you can only activate one Valmonica of the Guiding Rhythm per turn. And we have our 2 Link monsters, Divine Oddity of Valmonica. It reads that you need one effect monster, cannot be Link summoned unless you have a Fiend monster card with 3 or more resonance counter in your Pendulum Zone, so that's already a major requirement. And you can only special summon Divine Oddity of Valmonica once per turn. If a card you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can remove 3 resonance counters from your Pendulum Zone instead. So all of those counter building just to get some protection, but once per turn, or once per opponent's turn, quick effect, you can target one of your Valmonica normal spell traps that is banished or in your graveyard, apply that spell traps effect when that card is activated. And then we have the other one, Odd Deity of Valmonica, and this one reads that it also needs one effect monster, cannot be Link summoned unless you have a fairy monster card with 3 or more resonance counters, so again you need the entire world on your side, and you can only special summon Odd Deity of Valmonica once per turn. If this card is Link summoned, you can target monsters up to the number of resonance counters in your Pendulum Zone, destroy them, and you can remove 3 resonance counters from your Pendulum Zone. This card can make a second and third attack during each battle phase. So again, kind of cool, the extra attacks that can go for quick OTKs. You also have the destruction, but you have to get the 3 counters. In order to get the 3 counters, you need more ways to lose life points or gain them. And then on top of that, you still have to have the space for going second cards, otherwise you can't really play the game. And then when you happen to draw a specific hand with your angel that automatically rip a card out of your hand, it means that you're putting yourself at a less advantageous spot. And that's kind of the reason why the horror stuff is in here, where you have the ability to get into Coach King to get you more draws, potentially more pendulum summons that way, and just stuff like that. Overall, you're not going to be making a great board. I think that if you're going to end up making a good board, and I actually forgot the reframing, which should be the main deck here, Amritara, this is kind of what you're going for. You would want Amritara to get the reframing. Maybe you go into Baron, and if you go into Baron, it's also a likely chance that you're just going to end up passing on that. You have the SP Little Knight, a very weak strategy with interest that I don't see amassing long term. And I just feel like this could have been an entirely different archetype and done better almost no matter what it was, as long as it wasn't another like this. And finally, I will talk about the card art, and just that I'm not a fan. Like, I think that they did a great job with the background art of the card, but just seeing these little girls on the card art in a game that was supposed to be about monsters and attack points and stuff like that, I just can't get behind it. I think it's really cool when you look at Assault Synchron, which is a mixture of archetypes, Synchrons, and Blackwings that are fan favorites, and then you put them in contrast to the Valmonicas. It's just so different. Like, the only thing that the Valmonicas really have going for them is great background art, but that's pretty much it. For everyone who's made it this far, I'd like to thank you for watching and for the 600 plus subs. I truly appreciate your support, and now that we've monetized the channel, giving us access to supers and memberships means that more awesome stuff is on the horizon. To get the channel membership, just click on the description below, and there will be a link that takes you there. You'll also notice a free Discord link that I've made for us too. If you want to support me as a content creator, even if you can't donate supers or get a membership for the channel, clicking on those thumbs up and subscribe buttons help a lot too. For those wondering, I do plan on making updates to the channel as the support on the channel grows. Anyways, I hope to see you on the next one. It's Bones, signing out.